Pleasure to grace the hall of Workers' World. Before I get into today's talk, I want to mention a few names because I think it's important for us to remember these names. Yesterday was the day of the heroic guerrilla, October 8th, in honor of Che. And it wouldn't be right to have a meeting on the 9th of July, on the 9th of October and not have mentioned Che. So we want to remember Che and his contribution lives on. Also, ironically, perhaps, I learned from Workers' World today that Jorge Risque, another Cuban revolutionary leader, passed away at age 85 in Cuba yesterday. And he was very instrumental in helping to coordinate the Cuban volunteers who went to Southern Africa to liberate Angola and ultimately to free Nelson Mandela. So this giant of a leader passed away yesterday, and he passed away at the age of 85, and I think that we should also remember him. Much to my dismay, but at the same time, this person named Grace Lee Boggs from Detroit, she passed away at 100, and I'm sure that Martha Gravett could tell us volumes about her. But Grace Lee Boggs and her husband James Boggs were active in the late 60s, early 60s actually, but in the 60s they were very active in organizing the Detroit auto workers, and they fought pitched battles with management to improve the working conditions for workers in the Detroit auto plants. She passed away earlier this week at the age of 100, and so her contribution is memorable. She was also a confidant of Yuri Kochiyama, and so we mourn her loss, but at the same time she lived a full life and made an invaluable contribution to the struggle of workers around the world. I also learned that Leonard Peltier is also under a severe medical attack. His health is in danger. He suffers from diabetes, and there's an effort to have us forget about Leonard Peltier. Of course, we cannot afford to forget about him because he struggles on behalf of the indigenous people of the United States as well. And we must support his efforts to regain and restore his health, and also to free him, like Mumia. I want to commend both Dolores Cox and Betsy Payette and Joe Payette for having run articles in Workers' World in particular to alert our membership and workers in general about the health crisis that Mumia has been going through, which again is an atrocity and something that, were it not for the movement itself, Mumia could very well be dead now. He credits the movement for having kept him alive, and that of course would include his family, his brother and his wife, who have tirelessly been at Mumia's side. Mumia is a rare gem. We can't afford to lose him. We can't afford to let the state of Pennsylvania succeed in carrying out their effort to execute Mumia. His presence is invaluable, and the struggle to free him must continue at all costs. And I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted here, because as members of and defenders of the working class, we know how important Mumia is to all of us. I also wanted to point out that I learned from Rob Williams some years back that what we do here in the United States matters, that it was the rebellions in 1967 throughout the country that inspired the Tet Offensive in 1968 for the National Liberation Front in Vietnam. So we may think that we're isolated or what we do here doesn't impact other people, but on the contrary, that effort does impact other people. And I can remember even reading in Muhammad Speaks at the time that the rebellions here in the United States did have an influence on the struggle in Vietnam. And of course, their struggle inspired the rebellions here in the United States as well. So there's a back and forth that's healthy and needs to be remembered and promoted and encouraged, because the enemy won't tell our history, and we need to know and remember our history and to praise our heroes and heroines, because if we don't, who will? So with that being said, I want to move into my brief talk about Mumia. As we all know, Mumia has been suffering from a series of ailments brought on by the presence of the hepatitis C virus. And for a number of months, and for going back to around about 2012, the Department of Corrections knew that Mumia had the hepatitis C virus and allowed it to linger and ravage his body without doing anything. And the end result was that his skin broke out in rashes, irritations, his blood sugar had gone up, his blood pressure had increased, and so he was besieged with a number of ailments that were life-threatening. And were it not for the intervention of the people, Mumia could probably be a corpse by now, because he did come near death in March of this year when he went into diabetic shock. And it was a courageous brother whose name escapes me right now, but he was the one that sounded the alarm and demanded that Mumia get the immediate medical attention that he needed in order to at least stabilize his condition. Yesterday, Suzanne Ross had the good fortune of visiting Mumia, and I'll share with you her observations in a moment. But in the past 9 months, Mumia's medical crisis has been very dramatic, and his life had been in grave danger. And were it not for the struggle of his family, Pan Africa and the International Concerned Family and Friends, the lawyers, but mainly the people themselves, Mumia would be history. His weight loss, unrelenting skin eruptions, swollen legs, lethargy, and elevated blood sugar levels went without diagnosis until one of our doctors, meaning that Dr. Harris, he was made aware of Mumia's condition, and he was able to gain access to Mumia. He didn't see him in a doctor's office. He saw him in the visitor's waiting room, but in seeing him in the visitor's waiting room, he was able to determine that Mumia was in fact suffering from hepatitis C. And the prison officials, or the prison health officials, did little or nothing to alleviate Mumia's condition. He has been refused treatment. The struggle to demand that Mumia receive hepatitis C medication is still ongoing, as well as the estimated 10,000 prisoners in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections system who also suffer from the hepatitis C virus. And so while they hem and haw about the cost of the drug itself, the drug companies, which are subsidized and underwritten by taxpayers' money, they can afford to lower the price and make it available to not only Mumia, but to the other afflicted inmates as well. The price can be brought down. It was even suggested that a trip to India to secure the like medication could be done for a fraction of the cost of what you're saying, that a dosage here would be $1,000. Both Brett Grody and Bob Boyle, and of course Bob Boyle is a veteran lawyer. Brett Grody is with the, not the Innocence Project, but the group in Pennsylvania whose name escapes me right now. The Abolitionist movement, Abolitionist Law Center, they have intervened on Mumia's behalf, and were it not for that intervention, the legal authorities the prison authorities would have gone further with the attempt to execute Mumia. Mumia is one of those rare persons, and I'm speaking to the converted already, but Mumia is a rare person who we can't afford to lose. And in fighting to keep him alive, we fight for all political prisoners, because if they can succeed in eliminating Mumia, what protection do other political prisoners have? And the number of political prisoners throughout the United States is endless, from Mutulu Shakur to I'm drawing blanks now, but forgive me. But you know that there are a number of political prisoners in the United States, and we need to fight for the release of each and every one of them. And so that's an effort that must be continued. Also, in this week's Amsterdam News, there's a lead article on page 4 by Herb Boyd talking about Mumia. And there's a beautiful picture of Mumia and his wife when she went to visit him. And as we all know, when you imprison one person and they're connected to a family, you imprison the family. And this comes on the heel of Mumia and his wife having lost their daughter late last year, and they have to endure the inability to heal and comfort each other the way normal people would, and to mourn the loss of their daughter in a way that would be more normal and natural. And the prison authorities, of course, because they represent the evil side, so to speak, of the state, the violent nature of the state, would not agree to letting Mumia mourn properly the loss of his daughter, nor was he able to commiserate with his wife in a way that would allow them to share the grief. I want to share with the group also a beautiful cartoon that was developed by an artist named Seth Tabachman. And I have a limited number of copies that I would be happy to pass around, but it succinctly demonstrates or tells the story of Mumia's arrest and incarceration for these 30-odd years. And I would like for the membership to share in the copies as much as possible. We're circulating this as well as continuing the campaign to secure the hepatitis C treatment for Mumia, and also to have the hepatitis C treatment administered to the 10,000 prisoners in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. They themselves don't want to spend the money, but they can afford it. Their budget is ample enough to cover the cost, and certainly they could put pressure on the pharmaceutical companies to reduce the cost. I want to share with you some observations that Suzanne Ross made based on a visit to Mumia yesterday. She was able to see him, and I would like to share with you some of her comments. I saw Mumia yesterday. Tell IAC that we, the movement, have performed miracles. Mumia is not cured and could get sick again. In fact, very sick, meaning sicker at any point, because his underlying sickness has not been addressed. He needs to get the Hep C treatment. He needs to get out so we can monitor what he gets, and we don't leave Mumia in the hands of the enemy, even when they agree to give him medication. But being in the infirmary, an improved diet, and the love of the people have performed a miracle. The miracle is that Mumia looks and sounds great, even with his locks gone. You know, he had to remove his dreadlocks because the condition was making his hair fall out that he was being subjected to. So rather than have it, done piecemeal, he removed his dreadlocks. And there's a beautiful picture of Mumia and his brother Keith in a recent, I think it was put out by your prison radio, and so you could go to that site and see it. It's a good picture. But being in the infirmary, an improved diet and the love of the people have performed a miracle. The miracle is that Mumia looks and sounds great, even with his locks gone. He walked in on his own, looking strong and sounding great. His skin all over his body is much improved, both texture and the color. He can sleep for several hours at a time without the itching driving him crazy. He is still very tired. Looks to me like it's a stage following this incredible trauma he has undergone, a trauma of almost a year's duration. The life-threatening experience with such overwhelming illness seems to have caused systemic exhaustion. Mumia needs to nap twice a day. By 2:30 p.m. in the midst of him insisting that I continue telling him about the struggle at Riverside Church and its significance, he could not keep his head up. I kept insisting that I leave, and he kept insisting that I finish. I finally got him to get up with me, and both of us signed out, with Mumia once again expressing great love and appreciation for all of us. We hugged and said goodbye. A luta continua. He was survived. He has survived this round of their attempt to kill him. We know there will be another, and we must get him the medication that he needs. The medical workers petition IAC has initiated is the most recent initiative, and we will all be participating in a press conference sometime in the week of October 20th, time and location to be announced. We also want to call attention to the fact that Sue Davis and her leadership made it possible for the National Writers Union to make an endorsement of Mumia as well. And so if you know of any unions, especially medical unions or labor unions, and they have yet to sign on and endorse a petition on Mumia's behalf, please contact them and ask them to follow the example of both the National Writers Union and the Healthcare Workers Union, the health professionals, because a number of health professionals under the auspices of the IAC have come out with a recent declaration in support of Mumia, and this is very important. And the more of these declarations and announcements that people are watching the Pennsylvania Department of Correction, the safer Mumia becomes, because that spotlight on them is embarrassing, and it's one where they would rather work under the cover of darkness rather than the light of day. And so we need to keep the struggle going. Mumia is, I like to think of him as an eclipse. We don't see an eclipse very often, but it comes and it goes, and a long time expires in between before we see another eclipse. And when we lose leaders like Malcolm, when we lose leaders like Mumia, hopefully we won't lose Mumia, their presence is important. Their contributions are priceless, and we have to do everything that we can to keep Mumia alive. One of the things that I remember that former Prime Minister Pham Van Dong of Vietnam indicated that was when he was in prison, one of the things that they most appreciated while they were in prison was the support they got from the people in Vietnam, because that kept the struggle for them alive, but it also kept their spirits up. And political prisoners are humans too, and we must remember that in fighting for them, we fight for ourselves. And also the diet in the prisons. They do not provide nutritious meals, and also any pre-existing conditions that an incarcerated person may have is certainly aggravated while they're in prison.
Thank you.